So, what's up?
Today we're gonna, because you're getting sick of editing, we're gonna go ahead and do the machine maintenance. This is sort of maintenance and then some, yeah, an overview of things you have to do to this machine to keep it working. And I'm not sure how relevant it is to other sewing machines because this is the only sewing machine I've ever worked on extensively. So there, off we go then. So we'll just get into the guts of it. They have little places here. They were painted red when it was new to put oil. But I don't do that. I open up everything that is openable and oil it directly. Because those little holes just don't give you enough oil and can't get it all over everything. Which is key. What did I just drop? Especially when
Don't drop anything.
Especially when you're in the swamp. Anyway, so these are the two oils. This is both of them I buy from Sailrite. This is a Sailrite machine too. I bought that from Sailrite. And this stuff with syn colon, it just sounds disgusting, doesn't it? Like a synthetic colon. Anyway, PTFE, strangely enough, is exactly the same material. Polytetrafluoroethylene is what that thread that we were sewing with yesterday, and I was complaining about how it kept skipping. And so this is one of the reasons I have to do this today, is because I have to sew a sacrificial in Sombrella with polytetrafluoroethylene thread. And if I do that, it's just going to look like crap because it's going to skip all the stitches. Anyway, so this stuff, Super Lube, is super slippery, but it's super thick. I didn't realize when I bought it. So I went back to, now I use a mixture. It's about like 60-40 mix in here, because if you put too much of this in, it gums up all the little oil passages in the machine. I think it's good lubricant, and you can eat it. I don't know why you'd want to, but anyway. So I mix them up because this is a much thinner stuff, and anyway, it comes up something like that. It's thick enough, it's thin enough that it can run through all the little galleries, because what was happening when I was using this only was these little holes. You see all these little holes here? They tend to get filled up with thread, with dust, with whatever, and then this oil would just close them up, and then you couldn't get any lubricant into the machine. So that decided that wasn't really going to work for us. So lubrication in this area. Here we have, this is the part that turns, does various things, does all kinds of stuff. This is the linkage going down into the underside of the machine from, this is the drive, obviously right here. So this shaft is the main drive shaft to drive the head up and down. This eccentric cam here is what drives the foot fore and aft. This is the foot thing, and it's connected in here. To do something or other, I can't remember exactly. Oh, that's the foot lift. Sorry, yeah. And then in here you've got this little thing there is what shortens or lengthens or reverses the feed. So yeah, so that's the longest, that's reverse, and that can be set permanently right here between very short and 5 millimeters is the longest it'll go. And then yeah, and then these rods then go down and drive the bobbin shaft, which we'll get to later. So one of the things I start with is open up the oil reservoir. This, I'm not convinced it really is all that effective. It's got, especially with that thicker synthetic oil, as we were talking about earlier, it's so thick that this has that's what I was talking about. It turns to sludge. And it's really not doing anything to lubricate the machine. A big ball of slime in here. This thing has all underneath it, all these little all these little wicks. They're like a wick for a lamp. And they supposedly wick the oil from this reservoir into these various places. So there's one, let me get that, where's my rag? I don't have one. Okay. There's, yeah, one wicks oil into this fitting, one down to there. Oops, it fell out of this little hole. One wicks oil onto this gear, and these wick oil onto these things that tie into the drive down below. I fill it up with oil every time I open it up to re-oil it, which is maybe every couple weeks, no more because it's so humid here. But every couple weeks or every what? I don't know how many hours that is. How many hours in a week to use this thing? Maybe that's 40 hours or something. Anyway, it's empty every time, so something must happen with that stuff. More importantly though, that's why we take the cover off. And there's that little hole you can put, if you put oil through that hole in the cap, it's this hole, it goes through that hole, it doesn't fill this up at all. It makes this a little damp. That piece of whatever it is, felt padding, makes it a little damp. It never fills that reservoir up. So to actually lubricate the machine, you gotta open this up, fill up the reservoir, and it's totally pointless to do anything other than that. So we're gonna just smear oil all over. I think there's a hole there. Yeah, I don't know what that does. There's some bearing in there or bushing. So we're just gonna smear oil on everything, every place we can find where two surfaces touch. And obviously it's gonna, it runs down into this reservoir here, and that's fine, we don't care. It doesn't hurt anything to have too much oil. Okay, moving on. This is another reservoir like that one. And this one empties out in almost no time at all because it's tiny. And it's, I think, completely useless, but I fill it up every time anyway, because why not? I doubt if it lasts for more than a day, but I don't lubricate this any more than the rest of the machine. So it's got, as you can see, a tiny little piece of felt. Again, some of these wicks to wick the oil down, and the oil is going to go to, these wicks just hang in the air. You can see them in there. They're right back here. And theoretically, they will put oil on these pieces when they're moving. But obviously, they barely ever touch anything. So we don't count on that to do much for us. Instead, we take the cover off and close everything down that moves. These, they got little holes here. Those are oiling holes too. So I'll go ahead and start it moving, and you'll just see it. Let's use oil, and this is an oiling, and this one, and that one, this one, that one. There's one there, but it's all kind of gummed up. It's about time to really clean out all these oil galleries. This here, this moves a lot. And this knuckle here. And everything. A little bit there, a little bit there. If there's way too much oil, like I'm putting on way too much oil, you'll get it on the material, and it stains the umbrella. But we clean it up beforehand. So then back here on this on the foot feed drivetrain, there's a bunch more of these little hole. This is for the lift. So fill them up dutifully with oil. Oops. On that. Barrel. Looks good. There's a little fuzzy over there. What I use to clean it up when it's getting a little bit a little bit scummy and furry back there is carb cleaner. Pretty much dissolves everything, including your skin. This stuff does. The stuff they have in the States is much, it's not nearly as strong, but the stuff they sell down here in Guatemala, I think they have some different chemicals that are still legal here. So watch your eyes there.
Just like medicine too.
Mm-hmm. So obviously we get real involved with that with scrub brushes and rags and whatnot, but I'm not going to do it. This part especially, the drivetrain for the foot, it doesn't really move that much, and there's not a lot of load on it. So this part here, the I don't know what that's called actually. What is that called? The needle thing that pulls the thread up. The thread that pulls the thread up, that moves a lot, as well as the needle bar does too. So I like to make sure that this portion here, this part of the drivetrain, gets a lot of lubrication. And of course, the whole needle drive that we did earlier. And then down below, we start out with, there's a whole bunch of little holes in the deck. They all used to have a little dab of red paint on them, but that wore off a long time ago. And they all correspond to various little moving parts in the drivetrain for the bobbin case that we'll get to in a moment here. Going to digress briefly into couple of things here. This is a foot that allows you to get closer to whatever you're sewing. This is the burnt, UV damaged upper portion of a piece of luff tape from a jib. This happens a lot since I'm the only person I've ever seen who builds their sacrificials in such a way as to protect this from ultraviolet radiation. Everybody else in the world that I've ever seen, or maybe somebody else, but I haven't seen their sales yet, doesn't protect the sacrificial. Doesn't protect this luff tape, the top of the luff tape. So oftentimes it's burnt like this, and if you want to replace it, we open this up and unsew it for about 4 inches. This would be the, this has nothing to do with machine repair, does it? Basically, we open that up and then we cut out the 2 of those strings and then put the new piece inside the old piece, overlap so that as it goes up, the top piece is over the bottom piece so it doesn't get caught when it enters the luff foils. Anyway, and then to put them together so they'll overlap about this much, not the strings. The strings are cut inside here. But then I go through here and sew the rest of this back together. And we can do that with this little foot. So that one has to come all the way out. This one only part way. This this foot loosens up a lot. No idea why, but obviously there's nothing to it retightening it. It's simple. Before you ever put this on, you want to put your needle in the center, because if you try and sew a zigzag with this foot, you'll just break your needle. So the other walking foot, this one here, like I said, the screw comes loose, and you'll lift up the foot, and it'll just fall off. And then you know that you need to tighten it, obviously. This one loosens up all the flipping time. You can't keep it tight for 5 minutes. I have no idea why. It's never worked. So that's what you get, is you can cheat, in fact, and do it right there. And won't let you very long enough. So you get to sew something at that distance too. It's not quite where they were. I can cheat and actually sew it by having this presser foot sit on top of that, and that's how I usually do these. But that's on bolt ropes. When I make a big bolt rope for the stack packs and for whatever, this is the piece I use for that. So, and that's how you take that part on and off the needle. The zigzag is not, well, it's covered in the manual obviously, but there's some things that they don't tell you about from Sailrite, and I'm not sure if it's because they don't realize it or I don't know. They missed a few things in their explanation of how to change the cam from a 2-step to 4-step zigzag, and that's what we'll do next. So we're putting this back on because we're going to zigzag. And this is the cam. We got to take it off, but we have to move the rod that connects to the foot first. So there's 2 Allen screws that hold it. This is what drives it from the drivetrain in here. and they just set screws. Slide that out of the way. I'm sorry, I missed the whole freaking point. That was what we were getting at. The Sailrite doesn't either know about or do, but then I forgot. It's been so long since I've done the do-over. Where was I? Okay, this cam somewhere right there has a mark, and then on the back side of it, back in here, there are 2 set screws. And so we're going to rotate this until the mark is in the upper position, and in that position we can get to the 2 set screws. And then we're going to check and make sure this, no, we can do it from back here. This is the foot there. I want it as far back as possible. So forward, back. That's as far back as it goes. This, the mark is right here. That's in the accessible position. So that's the 2 things you need to do with this to remove it, make it easy. Is you bring the mark until it's on the upper-ish side, and then move the foot until it's, I think, all the way forward. Yeah, and this is all the way aft, all the way back. Then we undo the thing that connects the foot to the drivetrain. There's 2 set screws there, just loosen fuzz. So this one came with a mark here because my dog, Diego, my old dog, one time was sleeping underneath the table and somebody pulled up something stupid and he jumped up from underneath the table to run and bark at these people, and had this drawer full of all the bobbins and my bobbin cases and spare needles and tools and feet, and this thing straight in the water. Cost me like $250. Oh, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so this one has a mark on it, but it's not for this machine. So I went and tried to scratch the correct mark in here. The main thing you'll notice that on my machine, there's the mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's the mark. On this machine, the cam lobe. So this is 4-point. This is 1. Where are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. No, it's the high points. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. This one, this one, it's 2-point and there are 3 points. Anyway, the lobe goes right on there, so it's right in the middle. This is what pushes the needle back and forth. So on my machine, this mark here lines up with that, but we can get it where we need to by being right in the center of that flat spot. Then tighten. Then we're going to push this back into place. Attempting to move the foot, because we haven't moved it yet. So we're going to try and slide that in. And you got to kind of hold this piece here from binding. But we're going to try and slide. So this is going to slide into that fork. And that's what controls the foot down here. Where am I? Ooh. That's what makes the foot go back and forth. So if we can do that without disturbing the foot, then we can just tighten this straight down. One only, and then we'll check to see if we still have our full range of motion on the machine. And we do that by lifting the foot all the way up, bringing it all the way forward, and right there is the closest point of approach between this the walking foot and the presser foot. Right there is where, and they'll touch right in there. So what I can do, just to make sure, because if you don't have it as far forward as it can possibly go, you don't get a full travel. You won't get the full length of your stitches. So I'm just gonna, I move it till that's as close as it gets. I'm gonna open up the Allen screw down here, and then we're back here on the foot. I'm just gonna bring that foot up and touch it. So this, we're just gonna touch the walking foot to the back of the presser foot, and then move it just a little bit back so there's a little gap. Then I tighten up that screw again, and I check to see, make sure. You'll feel the interference when you run it with your hand, if it's interfering. And then when they're down, they're further apart. But this is the point right in there where you want to make sure they're not touching. And they're not touching. They're as close as they can be and not touch. And that's exactly where we want this. And then we can tighten the other screw. So those are the things to look for. When you take it apart, you want that, you want the where to go, that thing up-ish, and then we're going to move that till it's all the way aft. Pull this off, replace it with this is doing 2-point zigzag now, or straight, or whatever. And then when you put it back, lift that foot up, bring it as close to it as you can, and make sure it doesn't interfere between these two. And you're done. Bob's your uncle. It's super fast and easy. I don't actually hardly ever do this because on old sails, perforation is your enemy. And anytime you're stitching straight across the warp or the weft, and you're making a straight line, I mean, if you make a straight line, well, you're screwed. No one sews the sail straight, you know, outside of Belize or, you know, Wanaha or whatever. But the 2-point zigzag leaves you with holes that are, these holes are about a 1/4 inch apart, the ones that are in a line here. Let's say this on the right hand side of the stitch. So it's better than being 1/8 of an inch apart, because they're going, you know, from here to here to here to here. But it's not as good as a 3-point zigzag. On a 3-point, you have the holes. Where's something stitched 3-point? I wonder. So this one, the ones that line up, the stitches that line up, are, instead of being, you know, a 1/4 inch apart, they're like 3/4 of an inch between stitches that line up. And then that way you're not perforating it, the sail, nearly as much. Perforating it being like making holes in a row, like a piece of notebook paper. So this, the 4-point zigzag is the appropriate stitch, I think, to use on old sails, and which is why I almost never change this out. The only time I do use a 2-point zigzag is if we have like a newer sail, or say a brand new sail. Sometimes I buy them new that were wrong for whatever reason, from Precision or from Bacon's. They all sell them through Bacon's in Annapolis. Great guys. They if it's a brand new sail and like we have to alter it, I'll use the same stitch that they did in the same width and the same length and everything, so it doesn't look old. So it doesn't look like some hillbilly just stitched it with whatever machining he had on hand, which is, by the way, most of my work looks, but no one complains yet. Isn't that odd? You'd think at some point someone would be like, why did you use a 3-point or a 4-point stitch on my panels on my sail? But no one's ever said a thing about it. I don't think most people pay much attention, actually.
I don't think so.
Do you know how your sails are stitched? 4-point or 2-point?
I don't know.
Yeah, probably do.
Probably we'll look at that later on.
So this, the bobbin case, not much to it. It used to have a the small bobbin case screw, it's called. I've got spares. It goes in there, and this allows you to tension the bobbin thread by pressing this little bit of steel. Why is that not moving? Is that not moving? There, it was stuck. It allows you to tension the bobbin thread by pressing this little bit of steel down onto the thread. So the thread's going to come through that little hole, and then you get an opportunity to hold it, push it down tight with this thing. But I don't use it because I can never get enough upper thread tension on this machine for some reason. I've been over and over, and I don't know why. It used to work better, but 12 years old, it still works pretty good. But like for stitching this stuff, this heavy, that's the inside. It's, you know, so it's good. You can just see the knot just, you know, pulled tight against the Dacron. And this is brand new Dacron. The older Dacron, you can see the knots almost getting pulled in. So that's all you can ask for in Dacron. And you just can't pull hard enough to get the heavy thread to go into this material because it's so strong. With the lighter threads, it works perfectly fine. Anyway, where are we at? We're gonna go take all this crap off. Oh, let's go here instead. So while we're cleaning up, we're gonna real quick take this out, because this thing, the upper thread tension, it loves to fall out. If you got a really heavy sail and you have a really high tension, like I almost always do, the foot pedal also, you can't see it now because it's too much tension, opens up the upper thread tension. So there's a little rod inside there that pushes this plate and allows you to pull the thread through so that you can cut it off. When it's a lot of tension on it and you have a really thick piece and you're trying to lift it, sometimes you press too hard and the actuator rod pushes the upper thread tension straight out of the machine. So this is how that happens. There's a screw in here. It's the only thing that holds it into place. Take that out. This is the tension, this is the actuator rod. What it is actually doing when it pops it out is usually pops the center portion of this out, which is got a set screw back inside here. So obviously to access it we have to open that up. Then this part comes off. So this happens kind of regularly. I don't know, happens to me every year or two. This thing will just come flying out on the table, and then it gets to be super annoying because you see that this spring, it's got a piece in here. So that little piece of spring that goes fore and aft needs to slide into that slot. Oh, fuck. It can be really, really interesting. So you put it in, you're just totally blind, and you're like, where is it? Is it there? Yeah, got it. So this, I just bring it up. I think you can go tight there. There's a preset, it's in the book, 5/8 of an inch or something for how much tension you put on that, but I've never been able to notice it make any damn difference at all to the way the machine works. But there is something it says there. Don't forget to put your actuator rod back in. I'm going to take this and make it so that, let's take it about there, so that we get some spring tension. This spring, well, when you're feeding the thread through here, with both these things, you pass through here, and then this wraps around the bobbin there. I'm sorry, the upper thread tension goes in between the plates. And it's really hard when it's not attached. Then this spring pulls it like that. So basically, it's making sure that this thread stays fully engaged in between these two upper thread tension plates all the way. So you want to have that spring at such a place that it's going to be pulling. So this thing is pulling the thread that way. This spring won't pull it this way in order to be fully engaged. So we're going to put that, and we want to make sure that it's far enough out that it's freedom of motion, so it's not tight against the body of the machine. So I'm going to put it right about there. It'll work fine. And then we retighten this. Very tight, so it doesn't fly out. So where are we at? There's not much else down here to look at or talk about. It's the dirty, slimy, scuzzy chunks of Dacron from the thread and from the old sails, both. Okay, so sometimes you can pull the needle plate with the long screwdriver. Sometimes it doesn't seem to be able to access this. It did this time. So if it doesn't, because there's a piece of the machine in the way, you can put this down there instead and use it. Make a stubby screwdriver. That way, if you can't get your long screwdriver in, this one never works on that screw. Lift this, pull that out of the way. Needle plate. This gets slimy, of course, dirty, covered in crap. It also gets damaged quite a lot because when you're sewing and you're going through really heavy constructions, and the needle gets pushed, out by either you fed it poorly or usually it's just some heavy thing and it moves the needle over, and the needle will smack into the needle plate and then break. So you can see how many needles I've broken on this needle plate, like 30 or something. And it's not that old. We've been doing some pretty heavy constructions lately. So this thing, the needle plate, when after you beat the snot out of it too many times, it will actually deform and it'll get a bump in it, and then you can beat it back with a hammer on something flat, but it's pretty much getting close to done by that point. Chili, what are you doing? Ow! If this gets too sharp in here from pounding it with the needles, it can break threads and partially break threads, which is even more annoying. So I like to take just a little bit of wet dry, 220 or whatever you got. This can get you a little more life out of an old needle plate, because they're not super expensive, but they're like, I don't know, 30 bucks or $35 or something. And they're in the US, obviously, they're not in Guatemala. And that, make that nice and smooth again. It's not, you know, perfect on the top, but we don't really care about that. Just as long as it's smooth into here and it won't scratch or break the thread. That tube needs to come off. It's just for access. With this thing off, we can then remove the lower feed dog. This is a piece you always keep in stock because you'll see in a minute, it's an extraordinarily delicate little thing. Now, when you're doing the timing, which we'll cover a little bit in about 10 minutes, you don't have to take this off. You don't have to take off the feed dog, which is good because it's a pain. But when you're doing cleaning, you do, because it's filthy. So whatever, if all you did was knock the machine out of time, which can happen if you're going through really heavy construction and the needle gets stuck and doesn't come back out, if it falls out of the needle bar, and the jib hook comes around, you'll throw the machine out of time if you're going fast enough. So these things, right here, they cut all this material out, like that. Mm-hmm. That means that this part right there is super thin, and they break right there. And it happens, you know, I think I've gone through once every 2 or 3 years when it'll break. You don't really notice it at first, but this side will start sagging down a little bit. You'll notice it pretty quick. Something's up. Always have those in stock, because without it, you're done. Well, without any piece on this machine, you're done. So I stock needle plates, lower feed dogs, a whole bunch of these screws, upper thread tension, complete, bobbin cases, complete, and jib hooks, complete. So that's our next step, jib hook. This right there, that hook right there is what grabs the thread. So the thread comes down here, it's through the needle, and there the jib hook passes right behind the needle, right above the hole, and it grabs the thread and pulls it around and makes a single simple knot around the bobbin thread. And that's what a stitch is. That's all it ever does. That's all sewing machines do. So that's going to grab the thread. You can watch it if you want. Okay, so the jib hook is right there. It grabs the thread. There's no bobbin case in there right now, but it wraps it around, brings it, and it comes back up, and then this thing lifts up on the thread, and this holds it tense, and that pulls the knot tight, right up against the underside of the dacron, like we were seeing. Or actually, on a lighter materials, on Umbrella, it'll pull it in between the two pieces. Right here in the back are 3 screws, 1, 2, and 3. I'll access them from down below. You don't need to see that. It's not that interesting.
I'll stay here
Yeah.
in comfort.
Down here when we put it back, that's when you change. That's when you adjust the timing. You have to, by loosening these three, you can adjust when the jib hook. So the jib hook is now no longer connected to the shaft. This is the jib hook drive shaft, and there's little gears here. A little differential, not a differential. Anyway, little spider gear, change direction. So this thing right here is what holds the bobbin case, the part inside, from turning. And so just the jib hook turns, and this doesn't. If this, so anyway, so the bobbin stays stationary while the jib hook ties knots around it. Oh, this falls out. Okay. Back up top. So this is generally the cause of all that skip stitching, all this crap. Oftentimes, this crap right in there, particularly this here, the thread, when the jib hook catches that thread, it goes around into here, and this being filthy like that, I think it just doesn't work very well. Not with the Tenera, obviously, but the Dacron doesn't really seem to care. So all of this crap needs to come off. There. This is just dust from the thread. Here's a bunch more.
It's incredible how much there is.
Yeah. On the stitcher. A little bit of all of this is mixed up with the gum from the adhesive tape and dirt and worms. This stuff don't burn your hands, at least not mine, but every other part of your body it does. So maybe that's a bad sign, and I should be using gloves, but okay, put a little oil in that. And ready to go back in. You can remove this thing, the bobbin case part of the jib hook unit by removing all these screws. But they're super difficult to pull out. And sometimes, on the older ones at least, you usually can't get it. Not sure if there's much point in it. I guess you could probably clean it up better, but thing is the jib hooks fail eventually because there's the hook. It if it gets damaged, if it's not perfect, it doesn't work. You can sneak by on these things if they'd been damaged by running into the needle or something, which happens. You can take just a little piece of like 400 or 600 grit sandpaper and just smooth away. You can feel on this one, I can feel just the slightest trace of a burr on the back side of this jib hook. And in fact, I think it's worth right there. Because we want this, it's got to be sharp. But if there's a burr, that can shred the upper thread. And that, just what I just did, that's about all you can do to these things without totally screwing them up. If you go much further with changing the shape of the jib hook, you'll beyond just taking that, just that almost, but ineffable, that's not the right word. Anyway, if you go much beyond just what I just did now, it's done. $100, chuck it in the garbage. There's one more in stock, always one in stock of these. I don't stock a lot of them because they're expensive, and they last pretty well. They don't really have much to go wrong with them. So now we're going to go into the timing. This that little slot there, that is where it's easier to see up here than down below. That's where this piece lives. So this screws into the thing, and that little ear holds this from going back and forth. It doesn't touch it though, because the thread, the upper thread, has to slide through there. So if you can see, the jib hook comes around, it's the needle is going through this slot right there, goes down in, comes as it's coming back out, the jib hook grabs the thread and wraps it around, and the thread has to go through there, around the bobbin case, and then, and then back up through this slot. When it comes all the way around, it comes back up in here. I thought maybe that's what was giving me some problems, so I polished this with a polishing wheel, I believe, and it didn't help. I thought that was what's causing the upper thread tension to increase too much. So if anybody ever watches this video and can tell me another possible reason why the upper thread tension doesn't seem to be able to be high enough, even with the bobbin case completely open, then curious to know. Alright, timing on this machine is done with the needle all the way on the left hand side. On any machine you can be the needle all the way over, because as the jib hook comes around, it's gotta go past the needle at the right time, and so that when the needle is on the very far side, that's the furthest it has to go. The needle's over here, so the needle's going to go like left, zig, zig, right. So over here, the jib hook gets there in plenty of time because it's closer. Oh, it's over here that we need to time it, on the far side. Needle all the way, there's all the way to the right, here's all the way to the left. I'm just going to leave it hanging around in this area. And then I need to open up those screws just a buzz. And orient that piece at the top. I'm going to put this back in. It goes right there. And screw. Oh, this part's so not worth looking at. And so that's captured. But they're not touching, so there's room for the thread to pass down through there and then come back up around. And then we're going to bring this down. I'm just going to hold the jib hook from moving, because there are places on the jib hook, like right there, where obviously that's a problem if the needle hits that. So I'm going to hold it close to where we're timing it. The timing is basically ensuring that the jib hook passes the needle in such a manner at such a specific time in the rotation, in the cycle, that it will grab the thread and make a knot. It's on the way up, far left hand side. The jib hook needs to pass just like, see the thread's going through that hole. Can you see any of that on the camera? The thread's coming through this hole. Okay, so on the way back up, the jib hook has to pass above that hole, but just above that hole. So we're gonna have the intersection between the jib hook and the needle happens with the hook getting in the needle even just before the needle comes past. Now I'm going to hold it in place and tighten up one screw. And make sure we didn't do anything stupid by rotating this. You can see how close it is to hitting the case. There's not a lot of distance there. And you see how much sooner the jib hook comes on the far right side, that's coming from that side. So it passes, it hits the needle like here on this side. And on this side, it's right there. So it's hitting right here, which is right there. So the top of the hole is right here, and the jib hook is gonna to intersect with the needle, like just right in there, just above the hole. And we can demonstrate what's going on with this. So there's where the thread goes around. Whoops, got lost in there. Missed. Oh, it's because there's no needle plate. It's getting it allows it to go around the backside of the bobbin, which normally it wouldn't be able to do. Let's try it one more time, see if we can get it to work. There, it's grabbing it. Plenty of time on the right hand side. Let me get this. This should be over here. There. That's where it goes through that gap. See that? And there's the loop. And that's all the stitch is. Hold tight. Let's see on the left side. Far left. cut it. So it doesn't really work all that well with that needle plate, but you get an idea of what's going on anyway, which is important when you're trying to do the timing, because if you don't know what the timing is for, it's hard to remember what you're supposed to do. This way you don't have to keep watching the video. You can be like, oh, I'm looking for the jib hook to grab that piece of thread where it exits the needle so that it can make a loop. So anyway, then everything else is just reverse. There it is. This thing is the worst. It's just slightly magnetic, which doesn't really help it much at all. And when you're starting out with this piece.
Partially magnetic.
It's just a magnetic enough to stick, but not well enough to keep them on there. Yep.